She's not confused. You are. Right now, somewhere in your head, you're replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, trying to figure out what a look meant, what a delayed text meant, what a change in her tone meant. You're building a case in your mind, evidence for and evidence against, like you're trying to convict or acquit her of actually wanting you. Here's the problem. You're looking for proof in all the wrong places. Women don't announce interest the way men do. They don't say it outright, and most of the time, they don't even fully admit it to themselves until it's already obvious to everyone else. What she feels for you doesn't show up in her words. It shows up in four specific behavioral shifts, patterns so consistent that once you see them, you can't unsee them in her or in any woman. Most men miss all four. Some catch one and completely misread it. Tonight, you're going to learn to read what she's actually communicating, not what you hope she means, not what your anxiety tells you, but what her behavior is actually revealing. So here's the real question. When you look back at how she's been acting around you, how many of these four signs have you already seen and dismissed? If you're here, you're probably one of two men. Either there's a specific woman in your life right now, a coworker, a friend, someone from your past who reappeared, someone you matched with, and you're trying to decode whether what's between you is real or just something you've built up in your own head. Or you've been burned before, misread a woman's signals so badly that it cost you dignity, time, or a relationship you actually wanted, and now you're done guessing. You want the actual mechanics. Either way, I want to say something to you clearly because most content in this space won't say it. It is not weak or desperate to want clarity. Wanting to understand a woman's psychology isn't manipulation, and it isn't neediness. It's emotional intelligence. The men who struggle most with women aren't the ones asking these questions. They're the ones who never bother to ask them, who just react emotionally and wonder later why nothing worked. Here's what separates this video from the noise. I'm not going to give you generic advice like, just be confident or she'll show it if she likes you. That's not information. That's a shrug dressed up as advice. What you're going to get instead are four specific, observable behavioral markers, each one rooted in how female attention and interest actually function on a psychological level. Not how we wish they worked, not how movies portray them, but how they actually show up in real interactions. By the end of this video, you will be able to walk into any interaction with a woman, an old flame, a coworker, someone new, and read her actual level of interest within a matter of days, sometimes within a single conversation, not by guessing, not by overanalyzing a text message at 1 a.m., by pattern recognition. Here's the first curiosity seed I want to plant. One of these four signs is something almost every man notices and almost every man interprets completely backwards. What looks like disinterest is, in a specific context, one of the strongest indicators of attraction there is. I'll explain exactly when and why later in this video, because context is everything. And getting this one wrong is what sends most men straight into the friend zone or straight into a breakup they didn't see coming. Here's the second. There's a sign that has almost nothing to do with what she says to you directly, and everything to do with how she behaves when you are not in the room. This one is the hardest to fake, which is exactly why it matters so much. Now, before we go further, understand something about why these signs work the way they do. Female attraction, unlike male attraction, is rarely a single spike of interest. It's cumulative. It builds through repeated exposure to specific traits, safety, humor, unpredictability held together with consistency, social proof, and it expresses itself through subtle shifts in behavior long before it ever expresses itself through words. A woman who is interested in you is, in a very real sense, running a background psychological evaluation of you constantly, and her behavior is the printout of that evaluation. So what you're about to learn isn't a trick. It's not a manipulation tactic, and there is no line in this video that will teach you to hack a woman's psychology. What you're learning is how to read an evaluation that's already happening, whether you're aware of it or not. Let's get into what people commonly believe about how women show interest, and why that belief is almost completely wrong. Most men believe interest looks like pursuit. They believe that if a woman is interested, she'll initiate. She'll text first. She'll ask questions about your life unprompted. She'll make it obvious the way men are taught to make it obvious, direct, forward, unmistakable. This belief destroys more potential relationships than almost anything else in modern dating. Here's the truth. Psychologists who study attraction and gender behavior have found again and again, women are conditioned, socially, evolutionarily, and psychologically, to avoid appearing overly forward, especially early on. Not because they don't feel interest, because visible pursuit carries social and emotional risk for women in a way it doesn't for men. Rejection, being perceived as too much, being misjudged, these fears shape behavior long before a woman consciously decides how to act around someone she likes. So, what happens instead? Interest goes underground. It expresses itself sideways, through proximity, through small inconsistencies in behavior, through effort that doesn't announce itself as effort. Let me give you a real scenario. A man, we'll call him Daniel, spent months convinced that a woman he worked with, Sarah, wasn't interested in him. Why? Because she barely texted first. When he'd bring up plans, she'd often be busy. By every surface level metric he was using, she looked unavailable. But here's what he wasn't tracking. Every single day, Sarah remembered small details from their conversations, a work deadline he mentioned once, a small joke from 2 weeks earlier, and brought them back up unprompted. She rearranged her lunch schedule subtly to overlap with his more often than statistically likely, and when other women at the office asked about her weekend, she mentioned him. Not romantically, just mentioned him. Repeatedly. None of that looked like pursuit. All of it was interest. This is where cognitive dissonance comes in, a concept worth understanding here. Sarah's conscious mind was telling her, I'm just being friendly, I'm not chasing anyone, I don't want to seem desperate. But her subconscious behavior, the memory, the schedule shifts, the mentions, was operating on a completely different, more honest script. Humans and women, especially in early interest phases, will often act in ways that contradict their own self-narrative because the ego needs to protect itself from the vulnerability of admitting interest before it's reciprocated and confirmed safe. This is also why so many men get the disinterest read backwards. A woman who is nervous around you, who seems slightly awkward, who over-explains a text message, who takes longer to respond because she reread it 4 times, that is not always disinterest. In a specific context, once baseline comfort and familiarity already exist between you, that kind of behavioral inconsistency is often a sign of heightened investment, not reduced investment. Ease and confidence are actually more common markers of comfort or friendship. Nervous inconsistency, layered on top of existing warmth, is frequently a marker of something more. So if pursuit isn't the marker, what is? 4 things: consistent, observable, and hard to fake, not opinions, patterns. The first is proximity behavior, how she manages physical or digital space around you without being asked to. The second is memory and reference, what she retains and brings back into conversation unprompted. The third is what I call the third-party signal, how she behaves or speaks about you when you are not present, which almost no man ever gets visibility into, but which reveals more than anything said to your face. And the fourth is what happens to her baseline behavior, her humor, her openness, her energy, specifically around you compared to how she is with everyone else. Each one of these on its own means very little. A woman can remember a detail about anyone. She can be friendly with everyone. But when all 4 compound, when they stack on top of each other consistently over time, that's not friendliness anymore. That's a pattern. And patterns don't lie the way words sometimes do. Now let's break each one down, specifically so you know exactly what to look for. Sign 1, proximity management. The action. Watch how she positions herself around you without instruction, where she sits when there's a choice, how often she ends up near you in group settings, whether she creates small windows of overlap in her schedule that don't need to exist. The psychology behind it, proximity is one of the oldest, most primal signals of interest in human behavior, because closeness historically meant vulnerability. A woman doesn't have to say she wants to be near you, her body, and her scheduling decisions do that talking for her, often before her conscious mind has caught up. The common mistake: men notice proximity but assume it's coincidence or convenience. Stop assuming, start counting. One instance is coincidence. A repeated pattern across multiple settings is not. Sign 2, memory and reference. The action: pay attention to what she remembers from your conversations and, more importantly, what she brings back up without you mentioning it first. A random comment from 2 weeks ago, a goal you mentioned once, a joke that only makes sense because of something you told her. The psychology behind it. Memory is not neutral. The brain filters and retains information based on emotional salience. We remember what matters to us and we discard what doesn't. If she's retaining small, unimportant details about you, it's because her brain has flagged you as emotionally significant, not because she has a good memory in general. The common mistake: men wait for her to say something explicit and completely overlook this quieter, more reliable signal. Don't wait for the words. Track the memory. Sign. 3. The third-party signal. The action. Notice how she talks about you to other people, her friends, coworkers, mutual acquaintances, especially in situations where she doesn't know you'll find out. Does she mention you unprompted? Does she ask mutual friends questions about you? Does she bring you up in conversations that have nothing to do with you? The psychology behind it. How someone behaves when the audience is different reveals what's authentic versus performed. What she says or does around you can be shaped by nerves, social pressure, or self-protection. What she does when you're not in the room is much harder to fake because there's nothing to perform for. The common mistake: this is the hardest signal to access directly, which is exactly why most men never use it, and exactly why you should be building genuine friendships within her circle rather than treating her friends as gatekeepers to manipulate. Build real relationships. The information will come naturally. Sign 4, the baseline shift. The action. Compare how she is with you to how she is with other people in the same room, the same meeting, the same group setting. Is her laugh different? Is she more animated? Does she ask you more follow-up questions than she asks other people? Is her humor sharper, more playful, more teasing, specifically directed at you? The psychology behind it. This is the clearest and most reliable signal of the 4 because it requires a direct comparison against her own normal behavior, her baseline. You're not asking, is she nice to me? Nearly everyone is nice. You're asking, is she measurably, consistently different with me than she is with everyone else? The common mistake: men compare her behavior to some imaginary ideal of what interest should look like, instead of comparing it to her own baseline with other people. Stop imagining the ideal. Start watching the baseline. Here's what ties all 4 of these together, and it's important you hear this clearly. No single sign on its own is proof of anything. A woman managing proximity might just be socially warm. A woman remembering details might just have a sharp memory. Talking about you to friends could be entirely platonic. A slightly different baseline could be nothing more than personality. But when 2 or more of these signs are showing up consistently, together, over time, that is no longer coincidence. That is a woman's psychology revealing something her words haven't caught up to yet. Now I want to talk to the part of you that's not thinking clearly about this, the part that's anxious, that's rereading old messages right now, trying to apply everything you just heard in the last 20 minutes to one specific interaction from one specific day. Slow down. Here's what happens to most men after learning something like this. They don't use it as a lens. They use it as a magnifying glass pointed directly at their own anxiety. Every observation gets twisted into either desperate hope or crushing disappointment depending on their mood that day. That's not clarity, that's the same overthinking you had before, just wearing a more sophisticated outfit. Real emotional intelligence isn't about extracting certainty from every interaction. It's about tolerating ambiguity long enough to let a genuine pattern reveal itself. Patterns need time. A single day, a single text, a single interaction will never give you the full picture, and chasing that instant certainty is exactly what keeps men stuck in anxious loops, because they're demanding an answer the moment can't give them. Here's the reframe I want you to walk away with. Stop asking, does she like me? That question puts all the power outside of you, and it turns you into a passive observer of your own life, waiting for a verdict. Ask instead, am I becoming the kind of man worth being consistently chosen by? That question puts the focus back where it actually belongs, on your own growth, your own standards, your own life, and, ironically, it's the version of you that stops obsessively tracking signals, who tends to attract them most clearly. Because here's something almost nobody says out loud in this space. A man who needs the answer immediately is often the same man who misreads the signs, because desperation distorts perception. It makes you see interest where there's none, and it makes you dismiss real interest as not being enough. Patience isn't passive. Patience is what allows your perception to stay accurate instead of getting hijacked by your own anxiety. So use everything you learned today as a lens, not a verdict. Watch the proximity. Notice the memory. Pay attention to what she says when you're not there. Compare her baseline. Let the pattern build across days and weeks, not minutes. And while you're watching, keep building the life and the version of yourself that would be worth choosing, regardless of the outcome, with any one specific woman. Because the man who's grounded enough to read signals clearly without needing them to mean something desperately, that's the man these signs actually start showing up for. If this gave you real clarity today, hit subscribe because next week I'm breaking down the specific mistake men make in the first 30 days of dating that quietly kills attraction before it ever gets the chance to grow. And drop a comment below. Tell me which one of these 4 signs you've already noticed because I read every single one.